So I want you to listen to my take on Yamal and tell me if I'm wrong. I think it's pretty obvious that before the Nations League finals, Yamal was highly considered as the best player in the world. By not just fans, but majority of pundits and even other players felt this way.
I think he's the best player in the world, to be honest.
I was thinking, will we ever see another player like Messi again? Really, will we?
He even had the legendary Zidane saying his performance versus Inter was something he'd never witnessed in a knockout game. And it's crazy because Zidane have seen a lot of knockout games in the Messi and Ronaldo era. Messi versus Bayern in 2015, Ronaldo versus Juventus in 2017, and even Kaká versus United in 2007. But yet he said Yamal's control and command on the pitch was something he'd never seen. However, a lot of people had mixed feelings about Yamal's talent, saying he was very overhyped. And when Portugal defeated Spain, the world almost seemed to turn against him. The Ballon d'Or talks seemed to have vanished. All the hype turned into fans calling him arrogant, a flop, and a lot of memes were circulating online. But the most absurd thing I've seen is people comparing Yamal to Ansu Fati, saying he was going to fall off. And if you're being real with yourself, I'm sure you don't believe that's true. But at the same time, I get it. I know how insufferable the media can be and how they always overhype young players every chance they get. But I found a way to prove just how good Lamine Yamal is, and I think you'll love it. I went ahead and broke down every match, heat map, and stat from 2025. Then I compared Yamal to the 2008 version of Messi. Now, just hear me out. In 2008, Messi was ranked above legends like Kaká and Gerrard at just 20. And the results I found when I compared him and Yamal is something you have to see. It's just wild. Messi was also not far behind 2008 Ronaldo, so I think it'll be an interesting way to show just how good Yamal is currently. In order to compare them correctly, we have 5 factors that we need to look at, and they are football IQ, end product, ball mastery, mentality, and the difficulty of each era. The first thing we are going to compare is the skill level between 2008 Messi and 2025 Yamal. In 2006, when Ronaldinho was in his prime, he famously said that 18-year-old Messi would become the greatest player of all time. Back then, Ronaldinho was widely regarded as the best dribbler football had ever seen, but he saw something in Messi that made him think that, if nurtured correctly, this kid would surpass him. Fast forward 2 years later in 2008, and Messi was on the rise to take over world football. What Messi was doing with the ball was something we had never seen. Usually the greatest dribblers like Ronaldinho and R9 would give us highlight reels by dribbling past 4 or 5 players a few times a month. Messi, on the other hand, was doing this almost every week, usually starting off from the right wing, sometimes even in his own half, and would effortlessly move past the entire opposition, almost like the ball was glued to his feet. He was especially good in tight spaces. Even when he was surrounded from all sides, he'd still find a way through. And even when he fell, he'd still keep control of the ball and get back up and started dribbling again. Messi was also a genius when it came to his first touch and passing, making it hard for anyone 20 years or younger to even compare to him at that age. But that was up until we saw Lamine Yamal. Like Messi, Yamal is also very good on the ball, excelling at passing, ball control, shooting, and dribbling. At just 17, Lamine has gone up against some of the best defenders in the world like Rudiger, Bastoni, and DeMarco and absolutely demolished them. And right now, he's widely regarded as the best player in the world at the moment, ahead of prodigies like Mbappe and Haaland. And that's just insane because never in my life have I ever heard professional players and pundits call a teenager the best player in the world. What he is doing is something we've never seen in football. But here's the truth. Talent-wise, I think it's really close. 2008 Messi is better as it relates to abilities on the ball because Messi was almost impossible to dispossess when he was on the move. And even though data from 2008 is hard to find, it's stated that Messi played multiple matches where he completed more than 15 dribbles, with the 18 versus Villarreal and another 18 dribble against Huelva being the highest completed. And against United, it is said that he completed 16 dribbles in 2008. And considering how strong United was back then, this is actually insane. But Yamal's stats are just as impressive because his 11 dribbles versus Alaves is the most dribbles completed in the league since 2005. And in the UCL, he's only 2 behind Messi because he had 14 against Inter, though they weren't as strong as the United that Messi faced in 2008. So based on eye test, you could say Messi is more naturally gifted with the ball, which isn't a surprise. But unlike this version of Messi, Lamine plays with more composure. And that's largely due to the evolution of Barcelona's academy, because years of development and modern technology have made it possible for Yamal to learn elite-level decision-making much earlier than Messi did. And when we combine this with his immense talent, we get a 17-year-old who tells the media that Madrid cannot beat Barcelona, then go on to humiliate them.
The shot, Lamine Yamal with a goal! There's the celebration!
The media tried to create a rivalry with Ousmane Dembélé, and he humiliated him and France in the same week.
Advancing up the right, great touch inside, Lamine Yamal on lane defending, and it gets underneath Vigneault!
So while Messi had more raw potential in 2008, Yamal is a more refined product in 2025, but we'll reveal who wins the ball mastery round later on. To make the winner more valid, we have to look at their stats first. Now, when it comes to Messi and Yamal, both were playing in strong teams, but if you look closely, Barcelona in 2008 was far superior to the young squad we've got in 2025. That means Messi had better players around him, which should have helped him produce better numbers, but surprisingly, that didn't happen, and there are two main reasons why. The first reason is that Messi struggled with muscle injuries that season, missing 10 league games, which obviously affected his rhythm and consistency. The second reason is he was still developing. At just 20 years old, he hadn't yet learned how to convert his raw talent into the ludicrous numbers we're used to seeing from him, finishing the league with 10 goals and 14 assists. Now, similar to Messi, Yamal also suffered with injuries, but he managed to play 7 more league games than Messi. But what's incredible is that he matched Messi's goal contribution stats perfectly, with 9 goals and 15 assists. Now, even though they both had the same output, we have to consider who they were playing against. If you look at Messi's stats against defenders like Ramos, Cannavaro, Ibanez, and other defenders from clubs like Villarreal and Sevilla, Messi only managed 6 goal contributions against the 5 toughest teams in the league that year and no El Clasico goals. Now let's look at Yamal. His toughest opponents were Madrid, Atletico, Bilbao, Villarreal, and Betis. Against those 5, Lamine managed 7 goal contributions, including 2 goals in El Clasico. That's 1 more goal contribution than Messi. So if you were to add up the numbers, Messi had a total of 37 goal contributions in all competitions, while Yamal had 47 in all competitions. That's 10 more than Messi. But if you look at the average goal contribution per games played, Messi had a better average of 0.82 as opposed to Yamal's 0.76. So far, both Messi and Yamal seem evenly matched, but the next category might separate one from the other. The reason why mentality is so important is because no matter how talented you are, a weak mindset most certainly will make you crumble under pressure and struggle in big moments. Over the years, we've seen many talented players who just lacked that extra grit that could have propelled them to the very top of football. And Paulo Dybala is a very good example. Personally, he's one of the most gifted players I've seen since 2010, but he never quite reached the level that his talent demanded. So to win the big matches, you need a big personality, just that extra self-belief that will make the difference when you go up against the best teams. And between Yamal and Messi, it's hard to say who had the stronger mindset in the respective eras. It's pretty much well known that Yamal is very bold, and some would even call him arrogant, but we love that about him, because even though he talked trash in the media, he usually backs it up. And this plays well into what I mentioned earlier. When we talk about high-pressure games, there was the Clásico face-off on May 11th, where if Madrid won, it would have blown the title race wide open. And on top of that, Madrid went 2-0 up in just 14 minutes, but Yamal was able to influence his team to come back and win the match 4-3 and scored as well. The same thing happened when Inter went 2-0 up in the UCL semifinals. He didn't disappear under pressure. He instead rose up and took on Inter's entire defense to pull Barca back in the game and inspired them to a 3-all draw. And in the second leg, even though he didn't score and his team lost, he put in a performance that Zidane said was something he'd never seen. So as you can see, his mentality is just different, and no matter the occasion, he will perform. But people might not realize that 20-year-old Messi was very similar. Messi was very arrogant even though he was quiet, and that's because he believed that he could beat anybody in a 1v1. No matter if it was one of the greatest Manchester United team of all time with absolute legends, he would tear them apart and make everyone believe in his talent. He did the same thing in Spain. No matter who you were, Messi would make a professional football match look like an adult playing against kids in his lunch break.
Little Messi. Watch the ball, then watch the feet is the lesson.
The only thing that held him back this year was the fact that he hadn't yet learned to take advantage of Barcelona's style of play and maximize his output. So even though he was performing like this, you still need to score goals. And that's where Yamal might just have the edge, because he has more big game goals than Messi. So this category might have to go to Yamal for that reason. So football IQ is a player's ability to read, adapt, control, and impact the game intelligently. Like I had said before, finding in-depth statistical data for 2008 is very difficult, and I had to go off what I saw when I watched Messi's highlights and what I used to see from him back in the day. And from this, I have to give the football IQ section to Yamal, because he was trained to be a more tactical player. He leads Europe with 114 successful dribbles, ranks in the 97th percentile for passes into the penalty area, and creates more chances than most midfielders. And while Messi was a genius in 2008, he was more raw and not yet tactically adept. So for me, Yamal also wins this category. But who is the best player between them? Based on ball mastery and their output, Messi has a slight edge because he's a more gifted player with the ball at his feet. And with the average goals per games played stat, he has a 0.6 edge ahead of Yamal. But when you look at the fact that Yamal has better IQ, more composure, and a stronger mentality as it relates to big games, it kind of shifts the balance in his favor as the more effective player. Because talent-wise, even though Messi is superior, that doesn't really always win. Because, for example, a player like Hazard with immense skills and talent still pales in comparison to a less skilled player like Henry, who is more decisive. So depending on your preference, you could say the better player is either Yamal or Messi. It's just that close. And this is what I want people to understand when it comes to Lamine. 20-year-old Messi would have been the best in the world if not for 2008 Ronaldo. He had already surpassed most legends, ranking above players like Lampard, Kaká, Pirlo, Drogba, and 28-year-old Ronaldinho. So for a 17-year-old kid to reach this level, you have to applaud him despite how annoying the media might be. But there is going to be the debate that Messi played in a harder era, and I'll debunk that by saying that most of his goals came against weaker teams. And as I said before, he had 6 goal involvements against the top 6 teams, while playing in one of the best teams in the world with legends all around him. Yamal, on the other hand, plays in a more tactical and less physical era, but teams are considered harder to break down defensively. And he has 3 years less experience than Messi, but still performed at a somewhat equal level when you take into account all the factors we discussed. It was 2 different eras, and you can argue the difficulty of the two, but a player who has Yamal's talent and tactical intelligence is definitely going to make Barcelona's number 10 great again.